Now they mature in about 24 months. If that is the case, it means therefore we need 2 years to be able to plant and harvest cane. In order for us to be able to even multiply the production and even stop importation of sugar, we need to take these new varieties, and the varieties are maturing in 9 to 12 months. It means therefore we can have the time required on the farm, and that means we are able to produce twice in a year. That will help us to increase the sugar production, and therefore we shall cap on the importation and the need for the dollar for importation. That way, the CTUs become very, very useful. That is selling sugarcane with due respect of measuring the sugar content. Honourable Speaker, the varieties that have already been produced by the Sugar Research Institute are very high in sugar sucrose content, and that means we can therefore go the CTU way. And that is, we have investment in CTUs in about 11 of our 15 processing plants. We need to invest in those others, and then we need a policy direction where we will be able to basically now process the sugar, weigh the sugar or sell sugar in terms of sucrose content. Honourable Speaker, investment in agriculture is the way to go, and many other countries went that way. Why not Kenya? I think we need to reorganize ourselves and be able to create jobs. It is easier to create jobs in agriculture than most of the other sectors, and it is also one of the sectors that has got 4 times ability to reduce poverty and ability to also ensure food security. Honourable Speaker, I support. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Honourable Nyanza, you've removed your card. Okay, the Honourable Beatrice Elachi, Member for Dagoretti North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also rise to support and to appreciate the committee in what they have done. I know it has been the most toughest months that we have gone through, Madam Speaker, but also to appreciate just the last speaker, who I would have wished would have been the nominee for agriculture. But to say that, Mr. Speaker, as we look at the Supplementary Appropriation Bill number 2, how I wish, and I want to thank Chair, that we now need to look at ourselves and reflect, as you said, in terms of our own resources. We now need to relook and reflect on the overlapping streams that we have, Madam Speaker, those that we know are functions that can be put together, and we just have a function that functions well. Because also the overlapping functions that we have, either in water, in roads, you find there's a lot of internal intra-conflict that really challenges most of them at many times. And so, Madam Speaker, as I support, when I look at the first schedule, and I look at the issue of the national referral and specialized services, we look at the curative and reproductive maternal, newborn, child adolescents. Madam Speaker, I know we have a very serious crisis on the adolescents. And this is one thing we need to look at it clearly, and to see how do we support schools, Madam Speaker, to ensure we have wellness and skill lives in schools that will help the adolescents that we are finding ourselves with a lot of challenges, Madam Speaker, early pregnancies and many other issues that are affecting our adolescents. We need to think through. We need to take agriculture as the main pillar for rebuilding our country, Madam Speaker. And this we have to do deliberately, that we must ensure even young people, if we are able to give them incentives, Madam Speaker, for them to be able to engage in this agricultural sector, that they are able to go even and bring in value-added addition machineries, which we don't need to tax, but to assist them to bring them in duty-free, as long as they prove that they are coming to do work in the agricultural sector, they are coming to add value, they are coming to take land that is idle and deal with it. Madam Speaker, if we don't do that, we will be lying to our young people that we have white-collar jobs, which I know we don't have. But there is a way we can create different incentives to create more skills, Madam Speaker. And we can see even in the appropriation bill, there is on vote R11 I think it's 51 to 52. I think it's 51, Madam Speaker, that brings in now the issue of film development services, youth empowerment services. And this is one thing that we need to really emphasize, Madam Speaker. How do we create that incentive so that we can ensure young people are able to create their own jobs? They are very good on intelligence. They're very good on AI, Madam Speaker, artificial intelligence, and we need to see how we support them. And in supporting them is knowing very well most of them are still looking for jobs, and therefore we cannot push them into that bracket of also trying to force them to buy things the way they are, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in the crisis that we went through, I thought we shall reflect as members and ask ourselves, how do we come back with dignity and make Kenyans believe that we can bring in a good budget, a budget that can be trusted, but also that can be monitored? And how do we ensure we spend our monies well? You see, Madam Speaker, as much as we are pushing monies to roads and all that, you find that we will always do that, fine. But we must go beyond. We must agree to have most of our highways on a PPP so that we deal with it once and for all. And you know you have a good road, Madam Speaker, that will work, and you save the monies to now go and do other things to pay the debt that we are talking about, Madam Speaker. In terms of the women, when you look at the vote R1176, it talks about the amount required in the year ending 30th June 20 for recurrent for the State Department of Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprise. Madam Speaker, the Women Fund, it got lost somewhere. Where we were in the last 10 years, when you put today, you can't understand whether women are able to even continue borrowing from the same fund. We need to go back and request the president that this fund has to come back and be in two ways. One, you can apply digitally, but it should be administered by meeting the women one-on-one in their groups, Madam Speaker, and you are able to give them their check, and you know that you can follow up and understand what they are doing. Than digitizing the whole process, Madam Speaker, and you find you can't even see who is the beneficiary, how is the country benefiting, do we find ourselves gaining or losing, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we come now to health. And I know the community health workers are all awaiting to see. Just the same way we have ensured the interns have gone through, just the same way we are ensuring the JCC teachers, Madam Speaker, our community health workers, and I want us to really focus on this universal health, Madam Speaker, even to look at, even as we move. I know many people are fighting SHIF or NHIF, but it's one thing, Madam Speaker. It is for us to decide and see what is best for any Kenyan as an insurance of health. And Madam Speaker, it's important for us to really get out of waste. Let us look at what we normally say it is waste. And you know, Madam Speaker, waste is that these small things we do without knowing we are wasting. And when you put together their finances, you find that you've really wasted. Madam Speaker, in the education sector, I want to tell parents that you need to look at how the new model of funding of university is. And Madam Speaker, the day the parents will understand each band, how it works, you find that an orphan is 95%, Madam Speaker, supported. And so what she or he will pay is very minimum from the household. But many parents, it's like they are not understanding, Madam Speaker. And you find that in the same education sector, many parents do not look at the portal of their own children. And I want to convince parents, first years and second years, when they follow the model of government, it is fully what you're supposed to pay. For example, if your child has a school fees of 300,000, you find that 70% of that is 210, And therefore, the loan takes, and the rest, 15,000, goes to the household. And so parents must know, follow the new model, look at it, get to learn how your child is being sponsored, so that we remain, even with bursary, that can sponsor third years and fourth years. But first years who are joining now and second years, that model is a fantastic model for you to be in university. The students we should be worried about are students going to college, are the ones who we are supposed to get worried. Madam Speaker, you look at how the votes have been done. I just want to go to one vote that we need to also ask ourselves, which is vote D1082, which talks of the state of Department of Medical Services that deals with maternal newborns. I know I've talked about it, but I just want to repeat, Madam Speaker. It is time we also see how can we work with both functions. It is devolved, yes, but at the national level and the devolved level. It is important for us to start strengthening both and to ensure the referral can also work very closely with that is devolved. And therefore, Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to support and to thank the committee.
Honorable Member for Busia, Honorable Catherine Omayo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am very happy about this appropriation bill. The range of choices available there has prioritized what matters. For the first time, if we stick to that, Kenya will live within its means for some time, for the sake of development, for the sake of our children in school, and those children who live in ASAL and semi-arid areas, and floods, places where we have floods every time frequenting. Children who live around such places hardly go to school, but if we put food, like give the schools that these children could access, if we have some lunch or a program like that, these children will not lack to go to school just like any other child in Kenya. And if everything is put in place again, we will reduce corruption. And with reduction in corruption, many of our school-going children, especially those who come from poor families, will also just attend school like any other children. Then also, people who are living below poverty level, the gap between the rich and the poor will be reduced. This is evident because if actually a few people in Kenya, like 10% that have been controlling the economy of Kenya, will actually not have access to having it all like it has been, then a lot will trickle down to the grassroots people. And if a lot goes to the grassroots people, then that means that many will also have access to basic needs. That is where we all start talking about belonging to a country that takes care of its people or protects its people. So it is a good bill. I support it. I want to see no difference between a child from Siamahanga village, where I come from, and a child in Nairobi. There must be something. Then also the migration between the villages, between the rural areas will reduce, because every county, if possible, every county must have a factory. A lot of money has been getting lost into few people's pockets. But if that money can go now into developing industries in every county, that means younger people who are today up in their arms saying that they need jobs, these jobs will be available. and our economy will start growing. And when the economy grows, that means our people can have some pride in them and count themselves as belonging to this nation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Irene Mayaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. I stand here to support the Supplementary Appropriation Bill of 2024. And the reason why I am doing that, Honorable Speaker, is first because of the obvious austerity measures that are being put in place to ensure that not only do we, as a country, ensure that we are not having spillage of funds, but also that we're ensuring that we are cutting out on expenses that we believe are not exactly necessary right now. Honorable Speaker, I just want to highlight some of the things that are in this particular supplementary that I like. One of them is the fact that we have decided that the GSS interns will have no cut in terms of they will be supported fully, and also for the interns from the medical field. But Honorable Speaker, one of the major concerns that I do have, we live in a country where 78% of our population is youthful. But when you look at the allocations for monies that have been put towards the youth space, it brings a lot of concern. Honorable Speaker, even in this particular parliament, we do not have a department that is specific to youth-related affairs. Youths are treated in this country like a by the way, and we really need to look at how do we change that as a country. Honorable Speaker, I did hear the Chair of Budget speak about the fact that 47 of the sagas have been denied monies, and therefore they are going to be reallocated to the others, so that we are able to also just reduce the duplication that there is in this country. And that, Honorable Speaker, I want to agree with that, because we have too much duplication going on in this country. And we need to find a way where we are able to centralize some of these functions to be able to have them allocated to one particular place. Because, Honorable Speaker, it doesn't make sense when, for example, in terms of national government, you have an auditor for each and every department. Ideally, we should have the audit committee based on one place, so that when we are doing internal audits, then the people who are from this particular audit department will be able to just do audits for all the departments. That happens, Honorable Speaker, in most private sectors. You will never find, for example, in a bank, that a department for trade, a department for retail banking, for wholesale banking, each of them has their own auditor. They only have one audit department that is able to then be distributed as per schedule to all the other areas to be able to work. That is one of the ways that we as a country can be able to save money. Honorable Speaker, I did hear the Chair also speak about agriculture and some of the measures that have been put here. And Honorable Speaker, I would really love for some of the people who are engaging the Chair to stop engaging him, because he needs to listen to some of these measures that we are putting in place. Honorable Speaker, for example, we are talking about cost cutting. In this day and age in our country, in Kenya, we still have instances where our large-scale farmers are using old traditional agricultural methods. And yet we have countries like even our neighbor in Rwanda that use the drone technology when they're doing crop production and they're doing tests to see whether or not the large-scale farms have issues by drone technology. Why wouldn't we do that in Kenya? Because that would actually enable us to save money. Honorable Speaker, we need to stop being scared of going the technology way, because the technology way in a lot of these departments would be able to enable us to save money. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, for example, if we had really good technological interventions within this country, even in the offices of the MPs, if, for example, like I see in the CS offices where they have the Huawei digital platform where they can be able to have their meetings there, if we did have that, then we'd be able to save so much money. Honorable Speaker, the other thing that we need to speak about in this country is corruption budgeted corruption, because there's a lot of embezzlement of funds in terms of budgeted corruption. By the time we are asking different departmental committees to give us their budgets, have we been able to actually go back and check against their performance contracts? Were they able to even deliver what was put in their performance contracts? We don't do that. All we do is that we treat this whole country as a cost center. And the reason why I say that, Honorable Speaker, is because you will rarely ever see, when you're having departmental committee meetings with the different ministries in this country, never ever will you see a departmental committee come with a document telling you how they're planning to make revenue, how they're planning to raise revenue. Honorable Speaker, this takes me back to something that the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga really wanted for this country. He once said that as a country, we should have one product per county. What that meant was that every county would be able to focus on a specific product, be very good at it, and actually raise revenue within their own streams from that. Those are some of the austerity measures we should be talking about as a country. We should be talking about, now that we don't have a finance bill 2024, and everybody is giving excuses why we cannot do any development because now there's no money, because we are depending on taxes. Why are we not, as a country, thinking of how else to bring up innovations and investments for us to be able to raise money? Must it always be that we are raising money from taxation? I'll give you an example, Honorable Speaker, of the Ghanaian government right now. They have really focused on investment, an investment-driven government, for them to be able to actually raise money from other sources other than taxation. And I think for a country, that's the direction we should be thinking. Honorable Speaker, having said that, I just want to support this particular bill. It's a first of its own, where we are reducing expenses. We are taking things in the right direction. But I also, just as I conclude, want to invite us to start thinking outside the box and really start thinking of how we are gonna drive the economy of this country from where it is to a better economy, by actually looking at ways in which, as a country, we can begin to raise money on our own. I submit.
Mike. The Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi, member for Kwanza.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity. And I take on the very onset, my position is that actually this appropriation bill, number 2, 2024, is a very unique one, Madam Speaker, noting that it's come before the bill itself, the financial period 2024-2025. In all sense, I think it's a very unique approach. And it's just because some people were not happy with the bill, and so it was rejected. And my take is that I think in this appropriation bill, I also want to take this opportunity to thank the chairman, who has done a very good job, and I want to say echo to him, because first and foremost, the actually appropriated the funds to agriculture and health. In agriculture, I think the thing that actually very impressed me is that first, we're going to have the fertilizer subsidy, which is about 7.5 billion. And I hope and pray that it'll be there on time, so that it can be able to have our farmers access the fertilizer on time. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, the fertilizer is also going to be, and I hope and pray that the department or the Ministry of Agriculture on the importation of this fertilizer be done on time, so that you can be able to have it ready when the season of planting is there, so that it's there, and at the same time, after planting, we hope and pray, Mr. Speaker, that there will be also top pressing a fertilizer on time. Because this season, I come from Trans Nzoia, and You know, farmers even were coming to me as if I'm in the Ministry of Agriculture, but because I'm in that Committee of Agriculture, and they were asking why the fertilizer was not on time. Secondly, when we finished, the top pressing fertilizer was not even there. So I want to thank the committee for having come up with this, and there is a hope and pray that we'll have fertilizer on time, including, of course, top pressing on time. Secondly, as we go on, the fact that in agriculture, again, you have got money appropriated to import the milk coolers. Mr. Speaker, the milk coolers are very important for our country. First, it will encourage farmers to be able to do dairy farming, which, of course, as you know, we are in a tropical country, and therefore dairy farming is actually very appropriate here. And at one time, I was in the Middle East. Those days when I was working for Kodak, you would go to the Middle East, and when you go for breakfast, you'll get milk from this country. But today, you go there and find that when they serve you, you find milk coming from Uganda. Then when did the rain start beating us? I think the milk coolers that you are having are not just for the sake of it. I think they are going to encourage farmers to do dairy farming and be able to have enough milk for exportation, both milk powder and even in liquid milk to be able to. So this again, you have given some money to be able to import the mini coolers, which I think is very, very important, and I think I want to say congratulations. Then, of course, we have money, which again, that the Minister of Education, again, the Minister of Education has been given money, the feeding program. That encourages, because some areas, Mr. Speaker, you find that children are not even encouraged to go to school because there's nothing in school. They would rather stay at home and drink water than going to school, maybe some 5, 2 or 3 or 4, or even 3 kilometers away, and there's no feeding program. So again, this supplementary budget, I think, bill, I think has helped us and has going to encourage our children to go to school and stick to the school, other than going there and running away because there is no food. So the feeding program, I think, is quite good, is very encouraging. And of course, CSS, again, from what the chairman has just read, is that they are going to be paid. So again, there's an encouragement of those who actually have finished training as teachers, and I think will be paid for their services, and that was actually lacking, including, of course, the Minister of Health. Again, that again is something that this supplementary appropriation bill has again taken note and going to be able to pay for that. More important, Mr. Speaker, is that we, you know, when the original bill was cut, people actually made very, very bad remarks. We lost actually electricity because you had been located, I think, 52 million shillings by every constituency for rectification in the rural area. Imagine that gain went, and you have not revived that. I hope and pray that during the year, as we go forward, we'll be able to locate a few coins to be able to have electricity actually in the rural areas, because we had 52 million shillings in every constituency. Again, that was thrown away because the bill was rejected. Same thing with the CDF. I think we also lost some money, but never mind. These cuts, I think, are going to help, because some of them is because, again, Mr. Speaker, it was actually appropriation of some of the funds. You will find the ministry has 2 or 3 departments, and of course they do the same thing. You find duplication of services, which again is something that I want to say. The cuts that are in the ministry, not for nothing. It's because I think the committee looked at some of the departments and ministries are actually a duplication of services, and therefore that again is going to help save some money for doing other important projects and reallocate the funds elsewhere. So, I think the taxations actually that people complained about, I think, have been reduced. And I hope and pray that when we pass this appropriation bill, supplementary bill, we hope nobody can raise his finger complaining that this budget has again been reintroduced after being rejected. And therefore, I think, as far as I'm concerned, this is a very good supplementary budget, appropriation budget, and I hope and the bill is going to see the light of the day at the end of it tomorrow, whatever it is, so I can be able to move forward. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to say I support this supplementary appropriation bill, and I hope and look forward to people actually on both sides supporting it so they can be able to move forward, more particularly because some of the taxes actually have been cut. I support. Thank you.
The Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi, the Honorable Clive Gisairo, the MP for Kitutu Masaba, followed by the Honorable Dr. Oundo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise, first of all, to support the Supplementary Appropriation Bill number 2, 2024. I'd like to thank the good work done by the Chair and the members of his committee to try and align with the needs of the people of Kenya. For us to find ourselves here, Honorable Speaker, tells us that it's either we were living beyond our means or we're just not listening to the common mwananchi. This appropriation bill is just a testament that we can do better, that the little resources we have, we can be able to develop this country, provide jobs for our people, and minimize on borrowing. Honorable Speaker, in this bill, the education sector has made some gains, but there's still some room. And we expect that in the second supplementary, that should come sooner than later, should address some gaps, because in the education sector, we've lost a lot on infrastructure. But reality is, we are a nation struggling with classroom space. Yes, today we are saying, on the positive side, we are going to confirm 46,000 teachers to P&P from internship. But grade 9 is starting in a few months' time. We have a gross shortage of classrooms. Equally, while we confirm the 46,000, the initial plan had been to confirm 26, leave 20,000, and an internship, and recruit an additional 20,000 to bridge the gap. Now we are only discussing about confirming 46,000, which does not change the total number of teachers in JSS. Therefore, we shall be having a shortfall come January 2025. We therefore need to ensure that in the second supplementary, we have a discussion of bringing on board an additional number of teachers, not less than 20,000. Otherwise, we're going to have a crisis come January 2025.
Honorable Gisero, the the chair for the Departmental Committee on Education is not present, but I know he's listening, and our good chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee too, because we are talking of JSS. We have more TTCs, and we have lowered the grade for entry into TCCs by teachers, but the P1 teachers have been forgotten. Many of them are retiring without employment.
Sure.
So I wish you could firm up that point, because you know the heart of the chair of Budget and Appropriations Committees with the nation and with the teachers.
Yes, Speaker. I'm very sure that the chair is taking notes using his phone, because I know he's digital. He's been embracing the Gen Z agenda. Mr. Speaker, when we look at, again, the higher education, we again have challenges there. We've gone around around this country to universities. There is a big disconnect between the people sitting in Nairobi and the student in the university. It's my strong belief that we need to enable the higher education to move around, to get in touch with the reality. But for us to insist that the university student, when they have an issue, they have to travel all the way to Nairobi for their problems to be solved, we are actually making a problem worse for our youth. So we need to properly fund the Higher Education Loans Board, be it administrative and other services required for them to reach the students down there. We appreciate that in this budget, the security has been well taken care of, that our police officers will get a better pay. These are people who provide security to us. These are people who are always on the front line to combat crime and other ills in society. So those are gains done by this committee, the Budget Committee, to ensure that they are taken care of. Honorable Speaker, I want to differ slightly on the common assertion coming from some members who've spoken here that repeatedly that CDF lost 30 million. CDF lost 30 million. I would prefer that we look at things more positively. I don't believe CDF lost. These are hard times, and everyone had to take a hit. Mr. Speaker, what we need to be telling Kenyans is the current amount we are getting into constituencies. How much has it done? How prudent can we get to ensure that the little we get delivers more to our people? If we visit the 290 constituencies, can the CDFCs show us that the little they've gotten is of benefit to the people? If it is, let's be more efficient on what we have. Let us not cry of losing, yet it is not a deduction. We anticipated more, but that more now is not there. So we are retaining what we already had. So let us not dampen the mood. We've done well with the resources we've had. We can do better with the very same resources. Mr. Speaker, on the health sector, again, this supplementary budget goes ahead to ensure that the interns are well taken care of, because we need a healthy nation. We need our youth to have jobs. It is painful for any parent to educate a child, only for this child to come and sit outside with a medical degree, clinic officer training, but sitting at home. So this is also to say that the government has taken concern on our health providers and ensuring that they're all taken care of, and we keep absorbing more. Honorable Speaker, You know, we would like to inform that those who will be coming in, the new appointees, because some now happen to come from near where I sit here, we will still be hard on them if the views of the Kenyans are not taken into consideration. This was a starting point to have a progressive country, a country that presents to its people a progressive budget that indicates our ability and us living within our means. Honorable Speaker, electrification is a challenge. And we hope that in the next supplementary budget, rural electrification gets more funding. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, we are still wasting money on state departments that can be merged. We need to look into areas that can be consolidated to save taxpayers money. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I support this supplementary appropriation bill number 2. Thank you.
Dr. Wilberforce Oundo.
Thank you, Speaker. Let me also stand and make my few comments on the Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2024. Honorable Speaker, we find ourselves in uncharted waters, unprecedented situation that we find ourselves in. This is the first time probably in Kenya, and could be in many parts in this world, where a supplementary budget is prepared before you even implement the main budget. And Honorable Speaker, we find ourselves in this situation simply because we refuse to listen to the people of Kenya. We find ourselves in this situation because we refused to govern for the benefit of the people of Kenya. There were signs all along that things were not well. Yet we remained adamant, believing that we have the power of the barrel, we have the power of the gun. We will beat everybody into submission and get ourselves here. Honorable Speaker, naturally, we have to approve or second the supplementary bill to enable the country move on. Otherwise, without it, then the government will shut and everything will come to an end. And it's the rural people, it's the Kenyan population that will suffer. But Honorable Speaker, we support the bill, knowing very well that this is going to slow down the economy. We support the bill, knowing very well that this bill is going to lead Kenya into a terrible recession. We support this bill, knowing very well the little gains that we ever made, starting from the day of President Emilio Mwai Kibaki, are going to be rolled back drastically. Honorable Speaker, in a third world country like Kenya, where the government plays an important role in the locomotion of the economy, when the government is not spending, there is no economy. There's nothing that will grow. And that's why, Honorable Speaker, if you read various commentaries, be it by World Bank, EFD, IMF, they have a very grim view, a very negative view on the economic growth of this country in this calendar year, simply because they see there's no possibility of any economic impetus that will allow the economy to move. Honorable Speaker, when you look at this document, this supplementary, it is all about cuts, 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 and cuts. The most interesting thing, Honorable Speaker, and this, we need to ask ourselves very hard questions as a country. Honorable Speaker, there are serious cuts in development. So the obvious question many of us are asking,
And Kenyans are asking, does it mean the staff employed in these state departments, in these sagas, in these MDS, will simply be walking to the office, sit, read newspapers, go to their social media, and do nothing? Because without any development funds, Honorable Speaker, what do you do with the engineers that the chair of the Budget Appropriation Committee has talked about harmonizing them? What do you do with them? What do you do with the water engineers, Honorable Speaker, if you cut an entire, about several billions in the water harvesting program? So what do the civil engineers in the Ministry of Water do? Do they simply sit there, go to social media? What do you want them to do, Honorable Speaker? Because, Honorable Speaker, you cut 2-point-something billion on technical, vocational education and training. Yet, Honorable Speaker, the hallmark of Vision 2030, MTP3 and MTP4, was to equip Kenyans with skills to ensure that they participate in the manufacturing sector, Honorable Speaker. So what are we going to do to achieve the target 15% GDP contribution from manufacturing if we do not invest in skills acquisition, Honorable Speaker? Are we really serious in what we do, Honorable Speaker? Honorable Speaker, I would go on and on, but Honorable Speaker, the massive cuts, Honorable Speaker, in the education sector means, therefore, even the school infrastructure is not going to be there. We're not going to have money for school infrastructure. Yet by 2026, Honorable Speaker, we are expected to transition to the new education system as they move into the senior secondary. Even by next year, Honorable Speaker, many schools in rural Kenya do not have classrooms for grade 9. What are we going to do to house these boys and girls who are so fired up and energetic enough, they want to go to school, Honorable Speaker? What are we going to do? Even when you go to the current sector, I want to spend a little more time in education. You find that a whopping 10 billion, Honorable Speaker, has been taken away from teacher resource management. Therefore, it means the so-called retooling, retraining the existing teachers towards to enable them handle secondary school, senior secondary school, be it STEM or these various pathways, Honorable Speaker, is no longer going to be there. So we are going to limp through. We'll get teachers who are ill-trained, who are ill-prepared, Honorable Speaker, to manage the affairs of that particular category. Honorable Speaker, it is indeed a sad event. Honorable Speaker, many of us wonder, recurrent expenditure again, secondary education, 5 billion chopped off. Is it capitation? Is it quality assurance? What are we talking about? Primary education, again, Honorable Speaker, another 1.9 billion chopped, reduced. So if we can't invest in education, Honorable Speaker, are we killing these generations permanently, or what are we doing? Honorable Speaker, as I say, many times I've never supported supplementary, but I just want to appeal to the chair of Budget and Appropriation Committee. If there is going to be any change of fortune in terms of the projected revenue, if we are going to achieve that revenue, we must go back and revisit this particular appropriation bill. We must go back, Honorable Speaker, and revisit the bill, the act, completely. Because as it is now, we are literally grounding the government to halt. We are grounding the entire economy. We are putting the entire economy to a standstill, Honorable Speaker. We will be unable to do anything. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, and this probably when the chair of the Budget Appropriation Committee is responding, I have my tribulations. National administration, we have a cut of 6.6 billion on the general administration and support services. We need to know what has been reduced. Is it salaries to buy equipment? Is it salary to support general operations of the national administration system? And if that's the case, how does it relate to security and security situation now that we're not going to create jobs? And if we don't create jobs, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, we must also understand what's the purpose of passing an appropriation bill, yet the Treasury does not disburse the money. When you see the departmental committees, the PSS and the state corporation continuously lament that 30 to 40% of what is appropriated is never disbursed. We are running a broken system. As we support, we must go on record. We are running a rudderless and a broken system, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Undo. The Honorable Cynthia Muge, attending to some state duties. The Honorable Charles Ngusia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this chance and opportunity to want my voice on this important, unique, and in fact, has ever been witnessed. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Budget and Appropriation Committee, of course, for the work they have done. This year, they have had to contend with doing 2 appropriations bill in a span of less than 4 months because of the historical happening we witnessed recently in our constituency during these Gen Z activities, Mr. Speaker. Let me support it, but with a lot of reservation, Mr. Speaker. Number 1, JSS education sector has won by confirming our interns. But, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the primary schools, we have got over 300,000 trained primary school teachers who we have totally forgotten as far as employment in the education sector is concerned, Mr. Speaker. Where are we condemning these 300,000 P1 trained teachers, Mr. Speaker? That is an aspect we need to look very carefully, Mr. Speaker, going forward. The other issue in the education sector, while we appreciate the CDF is remaining constant, and let us stop misleading this House, CDF is going to remain the way it was since the last financial year, Mr. Speaker. I would like us to focus on the issue of infrastructure in our technical institutes, in our universities, in our primary schools, in our secondary schools, Mr. Speaker. Now the sector has hugely been affected, and we are going to witness what we call crisis in the education sector because of the 5 billion budget cut, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of agriculture, that is okay. We need to give our farmers fertilizer so that the productivity in that economic activity union activity can actually be improved. And the issues of course, Kenya coffee farmers getting more funds will be good. The issue of milk production, Mr. Speaker, which is an essential community in our community, Mr. Speaker, is going to benefit on that. Then, of course, another winning sector is the security. The police officers will be rewarded by salary increment, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, based on the unfolding in our country, I suggest our president, even the Budget and Appropriation Committee, the housing levy we are now paying. Why can't we take this money first to go to police officers, make them good housing units instead of actually going commercial way? Let us invest this money, first of all, in improving the public houses we give our civil servants, Mr. Speaker. Then we can generate into economic activities, Mr. Speaker, we are going to witness. Of course, the budget of school feeding program has been retained, but this should be universal. Children are being discriminated, especially the areas which are regarded as not marginalized. Like my constituency, I don't have an existing feeding program. We need to feed our students and our pupils all over the country without discriminating them, whether you are coming from a livestock or another community, Mr. Speaker. So I think going forward, the next financial year, we need to put what we call feeding program in all our primary and secondaries, especially primary schools, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, now, the country doesn't need austerity measures. What country needs is economic stimulus, Mr. Speaker. When the government is not spending, there is no economic growth, Mr. Speaker. When we are witnessing the rising issues of interest rates going up instead of going down, the economy is not going to recover. When we are experiencing political instability, there's nothing, Mr. Speaker, we are doing. So, Mr. Speaker, I suggest, while it is appropriate to put austerity measures, we need to form a task force that is going to oversight what we call economic stimulation program, Mr. Speaker, for our country to be able to grow economically, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the budget chair has stated that 47 sanghas are going to be dissolved. And these sanghas were actually merged or dissolved, wherever the technical term you are going to use. These sanghas most of them were formed by the Parliament Act. I would like to request we exercise this issue carefully before dissolving some of these sanghas. We need to sit down and discuss in a holistically view whether we need them. But we cannot just wait one committee or one person to decide whether a saga is good for us or it is bad for us, Mr. Speaker. The law has to be followed because majority of them were established by the Act of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issues of revenue collection needs to be relooked in our economy. I am sure whatever we are taxing Kenyans is sufficient to support growth, especially in our electricity sector, which has been adversely affected. Each of the constituencies could have gotten 50 million, but still, the money we are paying as taxes, we can afford to give each and every constituency, each and every Kenyan, each and every institution set up by the Parliament, we can give electricity, and which is a basic thing, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, I support, and I still insist, let us relook into supplementary tool and reinstate these funds for electricity. Every Kenyan is entitled to have electricity, water, and food. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
The Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, the MP for Kitui Central.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also stand to support this. And as a member of the Budget Committee, let me make these two statements, opening statements, just to put the record straight in terms of what Honorable Oundo and part of what Honorable CNN has said. Honorable Speaker, if you want to get the details of the budget in terms of itemized details, the Budget and Appropriation Committee did a report which was discussed last week. So that's why you find the details in terms of the changes which have been summarized into this bill. The second point, Honorable Speaker, the fact that we are proposing some changes to the parastatals or these sagas does not mean that we will not use the law. I want to remind honorable members that, honorable members, you did pass a law called Privatization Act. And that act stipulates very clearly what needs to be done before a parastatal or a saga is either privatized or merged with another one. So the law is very clear, it will be followed. My comments on this supplementary bill, Honorable Speaker, are as follows. Last week we did discuss the budget appropriation report. Last week we also went through a committee of supply, which was a committee of the whole House. And this is just a summary of the things we discussed last week. So in short, Honorable Speaker, you will not find anything new in this bill which was not captured in those other reports. But I want to pick 3 items which I think are important for Kenyans. One of them, Honorable Speaker, Kenyans need to note that the whole issue of GSS teachers who have been complaining that they are still on a temporary arrangement and they want to be permanent and pensionable, Honorable Speaker. Resources for that, the chair has confirmed we have those resources. So we want to encourage them that once this supplementary bill becomes an act of parliament, they should be able to be employed permanent and pensionable. The other matter, Honorable Speaker, which is critical is the issue of indans also in the Ministry of Health. Honorable Speaker, there has been a lot of lobbying from these indans that we need to factor in resources to have them employed also. In this supplementary bill, Honorable Speaker, there's a provision of 3.8 billion, which is expected to go towards that direction to ensure that these indans and the Ministry of Health are also employed, Honorable Speaker, on a permanent basis. So I thought it's important I say that. The other matter which is critical, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of A in A. Honorable Speaker, after we made a decision to scale down the budget because of the issues of the withdrawal of the finance bill, a lot of institutions have come up with proposals to have their ceiling for A in A improved or raised, Honorable Speaker. And what that means, Honorable Speaker, is that the whole area of A in A, in terms of the way we generate our resources, requires to be thoroughly checked so that we know what is the potential for each MDA so that we don't have areas where they collect more than they are reporting. In that case, we have what we call underreporting because it is very dangerous, Honorable Speaker. What it means is they will have more resources as compared to what we have appropriated for them. And that leads to either unnecessary expenditure or expenditure which is not controlled by Treasury. But, Honorable Speaker, 3 observations which I think is important as we move to the future. One of them, Honorable Speaker, is if you look at this supplementary bill, a lot of money has been reduced on development budget. And that's why I want to agree with Honorable CNN. Honorable Speaker, if we are not able to carry out economic activities in this country through development budget, then we cannot talk about economic growth. If we can't talk about economic growth, Honorable Speaker, it means issues of employment creation and all that. So this is an area, Honorable Speaker, we need to consider as a House, as we move through the future, how can we ensure that we have more money for development as opposed to more money for recurrent? In that case, we'll be helping the economy. The other matter, Honorable Speaker, which is critical, is the issue of budget deficits. I realized initially when we started discussing this, we were saying we'll be borrowing about 141 billion, Honorable Speaker. From this bill, this figure has moved up to 170 billion. What it says, Honorable Speaker, is that our appetite for borrowing still continues to be there, Honorable Speaker. And we have said very many times, this area of public debt is an area we really, seriously as a country, need to discuss and agree on way forward. For example, the budget deficit has now moved from 3.8 to 4.3%. And it is obvious, Honorable Speaker, it is very difficult to develop a country through borrowing. I think time has come when we must look at our public debt and say, what do we want as Kenyans? I think Kenyans out there, they have told us that borrow less, see whether we can use our own resources. And what Kenyans have said, since they have said they don't want to be taxed more, what it means, Honorable Speaker, is can we look at our expenditure items and come up with a good prioritization of the expenditure items so that at the end of the day, Honorable Speaker, we only fund what is very key or what is very core for this country. And in that case, we'll be growing the economy and Honorable Speaker will be helping this country. So as I conclude, Honorable Speaker, because those are the only things I wanted to say, our colleague and friend, Honorable Bandi, who we've worked together on these matters of budget for a long time, is the man who is supposed now to be dealing with this budget, Honorable Speaker. And I can tell you, Honorable Speaker, it is not going to be easy. So I just want to say, we wish him well. He has been having very good ideas together with me. Now he has the opportunity to implement what we have been saying should be implemented. I will be still reminding him what we have been saying every day so that we help this country move to the next level. What I want to appreciate most is now that we agree this side of this divide of the House has some brains which can help this country. We want now to make sure that we use this brain called Bandy so that we move Kenya to the next level. I'm convinced he has what it takes to move Kenya to the next level, but he has to implement what we have been discussing with him. For him to implement that, Honorable Speaker, he will require the political goodwill from the highest office. So I want to plead the highest office to provide that political goodwill. Because if it is not there, Honorable Speaker, we'll be going back to where we have always been. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Makali Mulu, before you, because you have some 1 or 2 minutes, you know you are a long-serving member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and thank you for the compliments to our colleague, the Honorable John Badi. But Honorable Makali, informed the House something at page 910. This line R2044, now that you are in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, you see the last item there?
Yeah, last item is...
this Senate legislation and oversight, is it inclusive of that thing called Senate Oversight Fund, or it excludes it?
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, if you look at the detailed report, we did agree that there was some money for Senate oversight. So this figure includes part of that money. But what we said as a committee, and it is probably documented, is that there should be a very clear framework on how this resource will be utilized. So that by having this framework, we'll also ensure that there is also accountability for the same resources. So in the past, they have used the money as part of the normal office operations. This time we are insisting there must be a very clear framework on how the resources will be used. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yeah, so you are saying that fund that was being created is not there?
No, the money is there because, you know, it was not a separate fund. What they did is just to budget as part of the normal Senate resources. But we are saying now we need a very clear framework so that when the money is used by the senators, issues of accountability are not overlooked. That is the position of the Speaker.
And so the senators will be paid salary for legislation and oversight, and they'll also have a Senate Oversight Fund. Do you confirm that?
Yeah, okay, that should be the position.
Thank you. The Honorable Joanna Ngeno for purposes of balance, followed by the Honorable Francis Sige.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this particular opportunity to delve into this supplementary budget appropriation bill, number 2 of 2024. Speaker, we all understand that the bill, the process that we are handling today is a process which has gone through, I think it is the first budgetary appropriation that has gone through a lot of turmoil and feelings and of course pains based on some of the cuts, Mr. Speaker. So I just want to also weigh in, and first I want to say that I support in totality, despite the many challenges that are going to accompany this particular appropriation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the budget we had done previously was one of the most expensive budget, and of course we all understand that the only avenues we had so that that budget could go through was of course through funding by our own selves, and that is by taxing the people of this country. And of course, Mr. Speaker, the rest of what happened is just history. What I want to say, Mr. Speaker, is that I want to thank the chairman and the committee for the support they gave to the particular departmental committees on their particular presentations they made, and of course, the aligning of several needs by several departments and of course, the needs of the country. Speaker, I want to state categorically that our Department for Housing Mr. Speaker, although there were some few adjustments on some of the allocations, we still believe that what has been passed, Mr. Speaker, will be enough to run the State Department and, of course, to do the affordable housing and institutional housings and, of course, hostels and the rest of the other infrastructural activities that are within that particular budgetary proposal. Mr. Speaker, we also believe that although there are so many cuts which were done on other areas, Mr. Speaker, we believe that when the economy of the country rises to the level that we can comfortably allocate money to various activities, then, Mr. Speaker, I think there is a time that we can have some of the activities which has been budgeted, appropriated correctly. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank also the, which of course most of the members here have talked about, the fact that we'll be confirming the 46 or 45,000 JSS teachers. This was a relief, Mr. Speaker, but of course you understand that confirming the 45 does not mean that we are now employing new ones. We still have the deficit that we always run. When you go to most of the schools, Mr. Speaker, especially the JSS, you'll realize that in every class we have maybe 2 or 3 teachers. And these are the teachers who are going to be teaching or who are teaching more than 10 subjects. So you can imagine how strained most of our schools are. Mr. Speaker, I'm also happy to note that among the issues which were added, Mr. Speaker, is a salary to the police. The police, Mr. Speaker, have been having, I think it is one of the areas where it is part of the area where it has never had an increment of salaries for quite some times. And I think this has contributed mostly to the issues that we normally have on the sector, because of the insecurities and of course also the laxity among us members of that particular sector, the corruption that is witnessed left, right, and center in most of the areas, Mr. Speaker. I think the increment of these salaries, Mr. Speaker, will go a long way to motivate our policemen so that they can actually do their work as is required. Mr. Speaker, there are also so many other things, Mr. Speaker, but my greatest elation, Mr. Speaker, is the reduction on areas where we think there has been a lot of wastages. Mr. Speaker, I've once said, Mr. Speaker, that if we really care about this country, and especially the fact that we cannot be collecting taxes from Kenyans painfully and spend them recklessly on the other side, Mr. Speaker, I've always said that let us collect money, let us collect taxes from our people, but let us also use the taxes that we are collecting from our people prudently, so that the pain people go through while they are giving out those monies, Mr. Speaker, is commensurate to the work that is being done by the money that is collected. And I once said, and most of the members even of this House, Mr. Speaker, condemned me. I said, these unnecessary travels, both by this House, both by all the houses, both the Senate and the county assemblies, governors, even the members of the executive, Mr. Speaker, we reduce these travels. We can get a lot of money that can go towards development instead of what is normally utilized for. Mr. Speaker, if you look at some of the areas, like, for example, travels and hospitalities, how much money are we spending on hospitalities, Mr. Speaker? So that when you go to most of these offices, there are so many expensive things which are bought in those offices, and that has nothing to do with the delivery of services. Mr. Speaker, those are things which I would wish every now and then the committee that is concerned with the budget proposals and of course appropriation should look into and ensure that you cut completely all those areas where wastages normally occur. Mr. Speaker, look at the number of vehicles. I'm one of those proponents, Mr. Speaker, who I always thank the great president of this country, who is the third, I think it was the third president, Mheshimiwa Kibaki, for the austerity measures he actually introduced in the government, Mr. Speaker. I remember before he took office, most of the cabinet secretaries, PSS, and everybody else who was working with it, even the CEOs, were driving luxurious vehicles, fuel guzzlers. But the president introduced the use of small vehicles. And Mr. Speaker, I think This is something also that the current president should take into consideration so that whatever wastage that we have in terms of vehicles, one vehicle is enough for wherever travels. One vehicle is enough for a cabinet secretary. One vehicle is enough for a PS, and not all these big vehicles, because where these people are traveling between their homes and the offices is a short distance, Mr. Speaker. So I think those are the areas that we can use austerity measures to reduce the cost and the wastage that we are spending on those particular areas. Mr. Speaker, look at the counties, Mr. Speaker, how much they are spending their monies. Mr. Speaker, every year we are sending over 350 billion to counties, Mr. Speaker. But when you go and try and search for developments that has been done by these monies, Mr. Speaker, most of the money that is sent to every county, Mr. Speaker, 80% goes for luxuries and all those that we call, all that we call maybe salaries, goes for travels, goes for expenditures in those recurrent expenditures, Mr. Speaker, so that you will only get around 20% going for development. Mr. Speaker, every year we are training this country to collect taxes. Every year those monies are sent to the counties. Every year those monies that are sent to the counties, Mr. Speaker, are spent recklessly on matters that does not bring anything to the table on the citizens that we are taxing. Mr. Speaker, I also wish, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what kind of amendment should be brought, Mr. Speaker, towards this allocation that is going towards counties, Mr. Speaker. When you look at the way sometimes some of the CDF expenditures are done, Mr. Speaker, around 90% goes for development, pure development. 10% only goes for recurrent and administration. Mr. Speaker, I wish we bring an amendment, and I wish the Senate should bring an amendment to the Counties Act, Mr. Speaker, so that whatever money is sent to the counties, Mr. Speaker, 80% should go for development. Only 20% should go for recurrent expenditure. Mr. Speaker, if we were to do that, every village, every ward, every constituency in this country, Mr. Speaker, will feel the development of this country. But if things remain the way it is right now, Mr. Speaker, I don't think there is going to be any meaningful development in the country on site. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, we must also, as a house, ensure that whatever we budget, the appropriation that we do to this, in this house, Mr. Speaker, goes towards real development, roads, electricity, water, and of course, the bursaries, Mr. Speaker. When you look at how much we are appropriating every year in this house, Mr. Speaker, and then you go to the village and find there are no roads. Mr. Speaker, I think it is high time also we ensure that we ring fence some of the allocations towards roads in the
Chairman, 2 minutes.
2 minutes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me those 2 minutes. You see, Mr. Speaker, if we do what we call equity in the budget appropriation, budget making process, Mr. Speaker, if this country, if we allocate 2.5 billion to every constituency in this country, Mr. Speaker, towards low volume 10-kilometer roads, that money goes only to 145 billion. Mr. Speaker, if we allocate 72 billion, which will be something like 250 million in every constituency, Mr. Speaker, towards water, every village in this country, Mr. Speaker, will feel that there is money is being allocated, Mr. Speaker. That is only 72 billion. If you allocate 100 million in every constituency, Mr. Speaker, towards electricity, every village, every household, every school, every center, Mr. Speaker, will feel electricity. And it is only 100 million. That goes to 29 billion in the whole budget, Mr. Speaker. If you overturn the budget that we normally, I mean the bursaries that we normally allocate in CDF, we allocate as counties, you allocate as the national government, the presidential bursaries. Mr. Speaker, if all those monies are collected, it adds to 70 billion. If that money is sent to secondary schools, Mr. Speaker, secondary school education will be free. You will pay nothing. So, Mr. Speaker, when you add all this, the money to roads, to every constituency, the money for water in every constituency, the money for electricity in every constituency, bursaries to every secondary school, Mr. Speaker, that is only 316 billion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. How much are we appropriating today? 3 trillion, 4 trillion. But when you go to the village, there's no road. You go to the village, there's no water. You go to the village, there is no electricity. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is high time as this House also, we look at how we do our budgets so that we can ring-fence the allocation to the real issues that we have in our villages. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, on the Hustler Fund. Hustler Fund was one of the most, the best introduction to our economy by His Excellency the President. But you see, Mr. Speaker, it has not been felt correctly in the ground. It is actually behaving like the Fuliza that we used to have in our systems. Mr. Speaker, if you divide the 50 billion that we allocate to Hustler Fund among its 290 constituencies, every constituency will go with 172 million. 172 million, Mr. Speaker, if the groups, or if it is injected in the usual ways of fund, we will have several groups in our villages, Mr. Speaker, especially youth groups, women groups, getting this money, and this money will be properly in circulation, and people would have felt it. Unlike what we have now. People have borrowed these like Fuliza, and they have disappeared. Some of them have just thrown away their SIM cards, and they are not paying back. So, Mr. Speaker, I think also this House has to take up the role of appropriating the Hustler Fund to be taken directly to the constituency so that youths and women can form groups and get empowered through this money. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I thank this House, and I support.
Thank you, Chairman. The Honorable Commissioner Ambassador Francis Sigei, MP for Sotik.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also support this bill. Mr. Speaker, on the one side, I would like to say that this is a very progressive bill, and I want to thank the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee for this wonderful job they have done. And more importantly, Chairman, for the very straight, clear, and articulate manner in which he addressed the House on these issues. Mr. Speaker, I want to mention a few things which I believe have come out very clearly in this bill. Number one, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of subsidized fertilizers. Mr. Speaker, we want to thank the President of this country for making a decision to give subsidized fertilizers not only to the maize farmers, but all the sectors in the agricultural economy. Mr. Speaker, we know, and in fact it is everywhere in the newspapers today and yesterday, that we now have pamba harvest in this country. I'm talking particularly about maize. We have a lot of maize in the entire Rift Valley and even other places that we are able to get pamba harvest. Mr. Speaker, this is an issue which was giving us a lot of problems, the food security. Mr. Speaker, this has been addressed very, very clearly. What I would like now the President and this budget to address is the issue of now buying maize, which is in surplus. Mr. Speaker, for many years, the farmers who are dealing with crops like maize have been having a very raw deal in the mere fact that whenever they have surplus, it's a problem in disposing this produce, and therefore they will not get the value for the money. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the ministry, the budget committee, to address this issue. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say I am very grateful, particularly for dairy farming, that this budget is going to address the issue of subsidizing, looking at the price. And this has been stated by the head of state, that the price per liter for maize in this country will not come below 50 shillings. And therefore, our farmers are going to be very happy with this bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to also thank the chairman of this Budget and Appropriation Committee for addressing the issue of the police officers. Mr. Speaker, I sit in that committee of Administration and Internal Security, and we really were very disheartened when we had a very big cut on security. And Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you and tell this House that the police officers are really working under duress, Mr. Speaker. And we know that they are very important officers in this country. You can also attest to the fact that our police officers are also doing a good job. Mr. Speaker, in Haiti, for example, the officers who have gone to Haiti, when they were leaving to Haiti, we had a lot of skepticism when they were going there. But now, Mr. Speaker, these officers are doing a fantastic job in Haiti. In fact, we have seen that we are able to tackle the gangs who are in the streets in that country. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to address other issues for our officers. They are living in pathetic situations. The houses they are living, Mr. Speaker, are in pathetic and horrible situations. And therefore, I think in the next budget, Mr. Speaker, we need to address the issue of housing. And in fact, also, Mr. Speaker, we had the issue of officers who are living outside the police stations. We also want to address the issue of the officers who have not had the uniforms. The uniforms is an issue which we need to be addressed in the police station. Again, Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about the issue of wastage. We need to sweep the loopholes because there's a lot of money which is going to wastage. And therefore, the government should be able to look at these loopholes and address it. Mr. Speaker, I want also to mention the issue of public debt. Mr. Speaker, I want to believe that when signing of loans in this country, either between countries or between organizations like IMF, World Bank, and this country, we need to be very thorough in looking at what it involves, what is the interest, and we should have public participation so that we know what we are signing for. Sometimes, Mr. Speaker, in the past, we have seen loans being signed without knowing the details and what it entails to have this thing. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to see that this issue of loans being audited and doing a lot of audits so that can be able to know what is happening. Mr. Speaker, I also we need to look at the issue of employment, Mr. Speaker, because when the GNCs came to this parliament, there were issues which they raised and they're pertinent. And employment is a very big issue which we need to look at. And therefore, we need to look at the issue of direct investment, finance, which are supposed to be invested in this country. We need to attract foreign investors who should come to this country and invest in manufacturing industries and other areas which can be able to give us employment. Also, the issue of value addition, Mr. Speaker. But I know this cannot address the issue of value of investment now. Chair, Mr. Speaker, I want to lastly speak about the domestic borrowing. I think, Mr. Speaker, we need to look more of borrowing within this country, within the domestic industry, so that we can be able to stop over-relying on the foreign borrowing. Mr. Speaker, there is one thing which I want to mention, and this is the last one, is the issue of teachers. I want to say the issue of absorbing the 6,000 teachers in this country was a very big plus for the budget. People who were hired as interns, teachers who are going to give us problems. In fact, already they were demonstrating, and we would like to applaud the budget committee for actually retaining these teachers. And that also goes for the intern doctors who are going to give us some valuable services for this country so that we can be able to reduce the issues. We need to have more teachers. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the budget committee, in the next budget, they need to address the issue of the 20,000 teachers to be employed so that we can be able to reduce the problem which we have in education. Mr. Speaker, there's an issue which I want to address which is not in this budget, Mr. Speaker, the issue of peace in this country. I think if we are going to address the issue of budget, we need to equally address the issue of peace in this country. Mr. Speaker, when we had a problem here in Parliament, everybody knew that security is paramount. And each of us, any of us who was here in Parliament, had to run for their lives. Mr. Speaker, peace is very important. And everybody in this country must address the issue of peace. We must keep peace in this country, and every Kenyan must be able to take part in ensuring that peace prevails in this country. For any development, for any budget, peace is very, very crucial. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. The Honorable John Gitonga.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also take toll and rise to support the Supplementary Appropriation Bill number 2 of 2024. Honorable Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to commend the committee, Budget and Appropriation Committee, especially the chairperson, for Honorable Speaker spending the very last minute trying to come up with a bill. But Honorable Speaker, every member, as I've heard, is in support of what has come out after the experience of the last finance bill. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that one of the things that has actually appeased me is the fact that, Honorable Speaker, we have learned to actually look at internal measures to cut on our costs, to cut on our spending. And Honorable Speaker, this House has also taken toll and reduced on its usage, and many other, Honorable Speaker, ministries and parastatos. And I want to take keen interest, Honorable Speaker, with the merging of parastatos that have been duplicating duties, and also, Honorable Speaker, using taxpayers' money in ways that it is not necessary, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to call upon this House to actually continue looking at even more ways of reduction of spending in our government that is not necessary. Honorable Speaker, let us actually, as we tell Kenyans to tighten their belts, let us also, Honorable Speaker, tighten the belt that is of government. And Honorable Speaker, many, even including advisors of government, have come out clean to say that there is a lot of wastage in government. Honorable Speaker, it is upon this House to look at where the wastage is, to see where we can actually ensure that we have reduced to efficiency the amount of money that is used in government, and put money where we can get full value. Honorable Speaker, we need to put our resources where we can conjure growth of our economy and ensure we have a healthy economy. Honorable Speaker, that actually calls for review of even governance of our big system of governance so that we can have a lean governance structure. And Honorable Speaker, if we are able to put our monies in issues such as agriculture, and Honorable Speaker, while I welcome the good budget that has been put in the Ministry of Agriculture, on issues such as empowerment of farmers through subsidy fertilizer, the 3.1 billion, Honorable Speaker, to tea matters, the common user facility, and also subsidized fertilizer, the coffee debt, matters to do with coffee, and also, Honorable Speaker, the sugar matters. I also called upon this House to even look at, or even ways we can have even bigger budget, Honorable Speaker, in the agriculture sector. But Honorable Speaker, we have a population of young people that has actually been a burden in terms of the joblessness in the nation, Honorable Speaker. Going to statistics, Honorable Speaker, we have over 2 million graduates without jobs. And Honorable Speaker, 2.3 million in specific. That calls for measures that will ensure that we get jobs for our young people. And Honorable Speaker, where we can get jobs is where we are supposed to even put more money in this as we move forward. And Honorable Speaker, as I normally say, we need to actually look at systems that are working and empower them. We need to ensure we don't reinvent the wheel, but whatever works in this country should always be empowered, Honorable Speaker. And as we are talking about that, Honorable Speaker, where it is touching on our young people, that we have a big population of young people that are jobless, we need to empower that. And I welcome the monies put to employ to permanent and pensionable basis the JSS teachers, the intern doctors, and also, Honorable Speaker, the increment in monies for TVETs, because that is where our young people are. But Honorable Speaker, on the same breath, I want to say that we need to actually see how we can empower monies that are giving cheap credit to our young people who want to go into personal employments. And Honorable Speaker, money is like Uwezo funds. Money is like youth funds. It is a high time we see Treasury looking at how we can put more money in those, because those are systems that work. I have been a witness of how we have empowered young people in Manyata constituency with only 6 million Kenya shillings. I have groups that I've seen develop. Some have opened small hotels and they're making money. Others are doing farming. Others are doing issues to do with poultry farming. And Honorable Speaker, I can see results in those monies. And I call upon this parliament to look at those things and see how we can do it better. And Honorable Speaker, I also want to comment and see what we can do in terms of maintenance of our roads. Honorable Speaker, we have a crisis in terms of the low volume roads that have been done around the country. It is a high time, Honorable Speaker, we even change how the contract spells for maintenance of our roads. We need to stop giving people contracts of 1 year to finish a road and go. We need to actually have contracts that are running for more than 5 to 10 years so that maintenance of our roads, we don't form potholes on our roads. In another 5 years, we can have crisis. And Honorable Speaker, there is actually hue and cry in many areas of the country in the status of roads that were done previously in the last 5 years. And in my place, Honorable Speaker, there are so many roads that require recarpeting. And this is something that could have been handled if the contractor was given a 5 to 10 years contract to ensure those roads are okay and they are fine. Honorable Speaker, I also want to actually comment and say that while we have put money in county governments, I also want to support what members have proposed, that there's no way we can have even some county governments using only less than 10% of their monies on development and the rest of the money going to actually recurrent expenditure. It tells you there is actually wastage in the system, and we need to look at how we can place laws that are going to ensure most of the monies that goes to our county through devolution are actually used for development. And that is actually how CDF money has worked. Why you cannot go to a constituency and find programs of CDF stalling is because, Honorable Speaker, it is very clear in law that CDF is a system that works. And we need to empower that more, Honorable Speaker, because it has proven to work and is actually a system that has results that can be verified by the people on our roads. Honorable Speaker, the issue of education is key also on this matter of the budget of this appropriation bill. Honorable Speaker, we have the free primary education. But Honorable Speaker, we have not been able to match the dream of Honorable Mwai Kibaki with infrastructure development, and we have actually compounded the problem by introducing the CBC program. Honorable Speaker, we need to actually do a lot on that. There is a need to ensure that system works so that we can be able to have an educated population that is able to carry this country moving forward. Let us actually, Honorable Speaker, put more resources or have a system that works. And Honorable Speaker, also there is a need to share information and ensure the information is shared, Honorable Speaker, well. The new funding model in our universities, parents are not understanding it. There is a need for government to do more on information sharing so that parents can know.
One minute for you to conclude that important point.
Honorable Speaker, what I was saying is that the new funding model is a brilliant model, but there is a problem with information because parents are receiving those school fees of 400,000 and they are getting a stroke. Some are actually telling the kid to give up on the courses they want to do. Let the information be shared and let us have clear information from our universities and from government so that parents can know that this model is good and so that we can have our kids learning in peace. Honorable Speaker, I rise and thank you so much for that.
Chairman Eric Muchangi.
All right, thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this very important bill, the Supplementary Appropriation Bill. Honorable Speaker, I wish to start by thanking the committee, the Budget Committee, led by the Honorable Ndede Nyoro, for a job very well done. This is a committee that has proven that they are indeed capable of doing what they are supposed to do as a parliamentary committee, and we really thank them for what they have continued to do. Honorable Speaker, some of the highlights that we have gotten from the report from this committee is on the issue of the junior secondary school teachers. And Honorable Speaker, these teachers have for a long time been appealing to members of parliament and to the president to make sure that they have been absorbed as permanent and pensionable teachers in this country. And I am delighted that their cry, their requests, and their appeals have now come to reality, given that the Budget Committee and this House is now going to ensure that these teachers have been employed on permanent and pensionable basis, given that our schools are in dire need of teachers, especially because we have a new curriculum, the CBC, which requires that our schools being given teachers so that they can ensure quality in the teaching of our kids, or other children. Honorable Speaker, this supplementary appropriation bill will ensure that police officers get a pay rise. This is very good news, Honorable Speaker, to the police officers in this country. They have been giving their services to the Kenyan citizens. They have been sacrificing, working in very deplorable situations and conditions, some without even proper housing, some working in very hard areas or hardship areas. And Honorable Speaker, they truly deserve recognition in terms of a pay rise. And the best thing that this Honorable House can do to our servicemen and women is to give them a pay rise and to ensure proper housing. Honorable Speaker, the deployment of our police officers in Haiti has proven that we have police officers who are properly trained, in that they have gone there and there is already good news and positive news that they are already in charge of the security situation in that country. Some of our police officers, Honorable Speaker, are actually, all of them are highly trained and highly qualified. Some have even gone to school and acquired degrees. They have degree certificates. Others have pursued master's degree certificates. And the best thing we should do to these officers who have not been promoted and who are earning small pay is to ensure that they get better pay. It is good, Honorable Speaker, to also realize that some of them went to school on borrowed money. They went to school on loan. So they need to repay the loans, yet they acquired the skills and the training, but they have not been promoted. So even as we give them a pay rise, it's also good to ensure that these police officers have been promoted so that they can also be motivated as they continue serving this republic. Honorable Speaker, it will be very good news for the farmers if they'll continue getting fertilizer. And the recent seasons where our farmers have received fertilizer, we have all seen that this country can adequately provide for itself through agriculture. And what we should continue doing, Honorable Speaker, is to ensure that this fertilizer, first of all, comes in time, so that our farmers have adequate time to collect it and to prepare their land, till their land, so that they plant at the required time, they apply the fertilizer at the required time, so that that can guarantee them good harvest when time comes. It's also important that we do not overlook the challenges that our farmers are facing in the distribution of the same fertilizer, in that some have to walk and to go to very far places to acquire this fertilizer. In the constituency where I come from, that is Runyenje's constituency, sometimes we have got to go to Embu town to go and get fertilizer from there. We have got to go to Ishiara in our neighboring constituency to go and get fertilizer from there, the National Cereals and Produce Board. And we would want to tell the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that when fertilizer comes, is brought right at the doorstep of the farmer. We have existing cooperative societies. We have existing establishments of the sub-county offices where fertilizer can be brought and systems put in place to give farmers the fertilizer at the doorstep. If exams are brought right at the office of the sub-county director of education and they are collected from there, why can't we take fertilizer from there and tell the farmers to come and pick it from there? If during elections we take election material to the primary schools or to the polling centers, why can't we take fertilizer right at the doorstep of the farmer? I know it is doable, and once the government procures this fertilizer, it is now important that the Ministry of Agriculture ensures that it delivers it at the convenience of the farmer. And then also, Honorable Speaker, it is important that we take precaution and take a lot of care so that we do not at any other time give our farmers substandard fertilizer, because that is a criminal activity. It is actually immoral to give farmers fertilizer that will not help their farms. So even as we allocate appropriate funds for this, we want to tell the ministry officials and all those that will be responsible for the importation and ensuring that this fertilizer is good, to know that Kenyans will be watching closely so that we get quality for our money. Honorable Speaker, the issue of the universal health coverage staff. These are people who they were brought on board in the year 2020. That is around the COVID time. And they were given a very funny category, very funny engagement, where they are given half salary. No gratuity, no allowances, no promotion, no career progression. They have been earning half salary, and they have been working in that arrangement for 4 years. They have been patient for long enough, and it is time now we give them now the dignity that goes along with or together with their qualifications. These are people who are working in very critical sector, the health sector. So they need to be motivated. And I'll be very happy, Honorable Speaker, when this House gives or appropriates funds to give these people. And I thank the Budget Committee for their factored this in the budget. Honorable Speaker, I also take notice of the fact that we need money for electricity, because every time in my constituency, I have to go to answer a question on electricity. It is unfortunate that we do not have in the budget enough money to connect homesteads to electricity, but I hope in the coming days funds will be made available so that these people can be given what they truly need, and that is electricity. So, Honorable Speaker, I support and I thank you.
The Honorable Omar Mwinyi, because of rank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for according me this opportunity to also weigh in on this very important bill. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I also want to ask this House to focus on the national goals before independence, Mr. Speaker. We had goals which were very clear. They had actually outlined what was to be expected for each sector, e.g. water, education, health, equity, and many more. If I can remind this House, Mr. Speaker, it was envisaged that by the year 2000, every household was supposed to have tapped water. But to this date, Mr. Speaker, that goal is still far-fetched. And we don't even know when we can actually achieve that. Mr. Speaker, on the side of education, we keep on changing our education system, and we don't know whether the need is actually coming from our own selves or it is actually being dictated maybe by foreign governments. Because we don't know what will come maybe after this government goes. If you look at the health sector, Mr. Speaker, by now we are supposed to be enjoying at least a good coverage for our people. But that one is also not there, Mr. Speaker. We don't need pay rises for any organization, be it police or parliamentarians or any other organization. But what we need is the government to make it possible for the economy to be friendly and to allow everybody to breathe. If the government takes its responsibility of making sure education is free, not even affordable, but actually free for everybody, the health is also free, the money that is actually being stolen on a daily basis, Mr. Speaker, as we were informed by the previous president, would actually do this work. And if this burden is removed from the parents, everybody would actually live a comfortable life. I know of a country in Southern Africa, I can't remember the country, but life there is so comfortable because the government has taken the responsibility of making sure education and health is actually made free for the Wananchi. And even the middle class, Mr. Speaker, are also enjoying life. Even those who are in the lower category, they also enjoy life. So I think we should actually shift from this idea of the organizations of workers waiting for the Labor Day to ask for a 10% increase, or maybe we, the parliamentarians, also asking for a pay raise for the policemen. This actually doesn't work. Even if we give them an increment, Mr. Speaker, it will never address the challenges that they are facing as a people. And remember, Mr. Speaker, police officers are supposed to be the most respected people in this world. Go to countries which are actually developed, the police officers are so much polished, they are so much official, and they will never look for this thing that, of course, we call kitu kidogo in whatever they do. They look very responsible, Mr. Speaker. But in our case here, the first thing the policeman looks at you and he thinks of drawing something from you. And it is just not because of anything, but because the life is actually unbearable. Mr. Speaker, we should also look at the budget that we are actually making, or maybe we are purporting to be making or to be contributing as a House. Mr. Speaker, it is something that is commonly known by us that we do not control these budgets. Even this budget committee, Mr. Speaker, they come up with recommendations, but they are actually thrown out of there and thrown into the dustbins. It is actually something that is very known. Mr. Speaker, there are ministries and other organizations which are normally given funding which they cannot absorb. But interestingly, the following year, they would even ask for more, and yet we also disburse funds for them. So, Mr. Speaker, we are also culpable in that we are contributing towards the pilferage of the funds that, of course, we collect, which are supposed to be used for the development of the country. Mr. Speaker, we also look at manifestos. It is now common knowledge in this country, Mr. Speaker, that every government comes up with a manifesto which does not have, or which does not reflect the original goals of this country. For example, the goal of education, water, health, these are the goals which were set up during the independence. But to date, you find we are deviating from those goals, Mr. Speaker, like what my other colleagues was actually contributing, the chair of housing, the Hustler Fund. If you look at the Hustler Fund, how does it benefit this country? What if we spent that money towards health, towards education, towards improving infrastructure? It would actually have contributed immensely to this nation, Mr. Speaker. So we should actually deviate, Mr. Speaker, from cheap politics, politics of deceit. We should actually get away from that because we are now in the 21st century. We are supposed to come up with policies which are measurable, which are profitable to the country, which will make this country to move forward. Now, Mr. Speaker, we don't know the next government will come up with which manifesto, which of course definitely will never help this country to develop. Mr. Speaker, as Africans, maybe Kenyans, we are very much used to cheering our political leaders. I can remember the days of Nyayo. He will come up with an idea, everybody will cheer and everybody will contribute. This is a very good idea, this is nice. But when it is actually opposed and it seems to be getting some traction, the president will retract and everybody will praise him for being wise and for actually being somebody with a foresight. And this thing is also happening. We can see our colleagues were very vehement in supporting the financial bill of 2024. But when the president resigned it, they also cheered him up. So I think we should also stop as a house to cheer our leaders when they are wrong. We should be in a position to state our position because we are supposed to be thinking. We are supposed to be using our faculties. We are supposed to know what is good for this country and what is not good for this country. But otherwise, if we continue with this habit, Mr. Speaker, of cheering our political leaders, then we're not taking this country anywhere. Mr. Speaker, if you look at education today, we may even say it is not addressing the needs of our people currently. You find anybody who has a degree is expecting to be employed. And yet we know very well, Mr. Speaker, that employment opportunities are very, very scarce. So there must be a change in the way our students are being trained, not to depend on employment. Mr. Speaker, we must also be honest as a country. The political class should also be very honest because today we are having cases of JKA being said that they're being sold. We are also having KPA, which is a profitable organization, being given concession, which is something that, of course, we find is not the right thing to do at this time. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the budget, we are talking about the Senate being given oversight funds. And yet we know their salaries are actually based on their representation and oversight. That is actually their role. So if you continue with this kind of, behavior.
Honorable Mwinyi, only 30 seconds because two people are yet to speak.
Then corruption, Mr. Speaker. Is corruption rewarding? Does it contribute towards the national development? Does it contribute to the national wealth? Is it encouraged? Yes, it is encouraged. And that is why we see political leaders who have stolen from the government kitty, they would always go behind the government of the day so that their cases are not actually activated in the court. So I think this corruption is something that should be dealt with the way the Chinese do it in their country. It would even be better if we have people being shot, being hanged for being corrupt, Mr. Speaker. Our national anthem.
Thank you. The Honorable Robert Basil, MP for Yat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the floor. Like my friends have already said, allow me to thank the chairman for Budget and Appropriation Committee for bringing this bill to the House. This particular bill, the Supplementary Appropriation Bill, has some positives and some flaws. And I'll begin with the positives, which I'll start with the education sector. Mr. Speaker, for sure, absorbing the 46,000 teachers is a plus on this particular bill. The reason why I'm saying that, Mr. Speaker, is if you look at many teachers today, they're actually languishing in poverty because majority of them are not employed. Mr. Speaker, most of the parents today are shouldering the burden of paying BOM teachers when in actual sense, as taxpayers, the government should be the one to pay teachers for them. A case in point is my constituency, Yatta, where more than 30% of my teachers are actually BOM teachers. And that is a big burden for parents who are extremely struggling, not only to exist, but to meet the basic needs in their families. And it's very unfortunate that they have been doing so when they are paying taxes. And that's why I applaud this particular bill for considering paying or recruiting 46,000 teachers to pensionable and permanent terms. Mr. Speaker, allow me also to appreciate the consideration of medical interns under the health sector, because you know for sure when you have a sick nation or sick people, you have a sick nation. And when we don't consider medical practitioners to be recruited to support promotion or discharging of health services is very unfortunate. And it is also worrying to see medical doctors actually striking at this point of time. So, Mr. Speaker, when these medical interns are being considered, that is a good thing, and that's why I applaud the chairman for budget for considering that. Because doctors are not supposed to be on the streets, but they should be in hospitals or in health services, delivering services to our working force. Number three, Mr. Speaker, allow me to appreciate also the recognition of police. Remunerating police under this bill is very important, considering the very pertinent role that police play to make sure we are safe and to safeguard the country internally. So remunerating them is positive, and I appreciate that. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, is a school feeding program. The chairman of budget, Mr. Speaker, said that they have preserved the school feeding program. And I would recommend that the school feeding program be taken to all schools in the entire country in our constituencies, because if you look at school feeding program is an essential component of education, simply because students cannot concentrate when their stomach is empty. And that's why I really recommend the team under the chair of budget for appropriating money for school feeding program. On the floors, Mr. Speaker, I'll begin with electricity. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, you need to understand that most of the rural areas do not have electricity. In my constituency, more than 40% is not connected to electricity. And actually, if you look at electricity connectivity, when you connect a person to electricity, that is a new customer you are getting, Mr. Speaker. And being a new customer, we are talking of new revenue generated by government. So we should invest our money where it is required and where the money can be regenerated. And that's why we cannot say no to electricity. So that cutting of electricity should be reviewed, should be considered and reinstated, so that at least we create a pool of new customers as we also connect our people with electricity and generate more revenue. Mr. Speaker, on irrigation, it's important to understand that food security is an important component of any nation. And it's actually shocking to hear that money has been cut on irrigation. We should be talking of mega dams being constructed in this country. In my case, I'll talk of Yatta Dam, among other dams which could be important to boost food productivity, produce raw materials, to support industries. And that's why I say we should look at our priorities and put money where it is rightly needed, so that we don't have a bloated budget which is putting more weight to Kenyans instead of refocusing on areas where money can be recouped and economy of this country can be rejuvenated. And that's why I say electricity, irrigation for mega dams should have been considered. Mr. Speaker, I do agree with the chairman of budget when he said that some of the state agencies need to be collapsed. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate to see duplication of services within government, where you see in a government you have so many state agencies Today we are talking of 290 parastatals, Mr. Speaker. Do we really need 290 parastatals? The answer is no. Why can't we reduce that number to about 100 parastatals at max so that we have enough saving to engineer that money to development? Mr. Speaker, additionally, why do we need 51 principal secretaries, Mr. Speaker? Why can't we lower that number to about 22 or 21 to align with the cabinet secretaries? The time of Moi, when the Moi government, when the late Moi was the president, we used to have one PS per ministry, one director per ministry, and that is where we need to go so that we have more savings to be able to channel this money to development. Mr. Speaker, that's important, and we should not throw it under the carpet if we are patriots and people are elected to represent our people across the country. Mr. Speaker, on equalization fund, I must say, Mr. Speaker, this money needs to be used wisely. The other time I spoke on this floor, where some areas were considered under the equalization fund, live in other areas. Why, Mr. Speaker, why can't we use baseline data to be able to know areas that have been marginalized so that resources can go to areas that have been ignored since 1963, Mr. Speaker? Let's put aside the tribal lands, the ethnic lines, which have been used in appropriation of resources, and use or appropriate resources based on needs and areas where they are required, Mr. Speaker. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, I also joined my other colleagues who talked about the oversight fund for senators. Mr. Speaker, it has to go on record. The duty of a member of parliament, including a senator, one starts with representation, number two is oversight, number three is legislation, Mr. Speaker. So when you pay someone for doing their job, having a salary, that is good. But why do we need to create another fund called oversight fund to pay senators when in actual sense they are being remunerated as people's representative at that capacity, Mr. Speaker? So that should be removed. It should not be in this appropriation bill because we don't need a senator or Senate oversight fund when in actual sense they are already paid to do oversight as we are equally done. Mr. Speaker, I also want to mention that going forward, let's consider itemizing our budget, Mr. Speaker. Because if we itemize our budget, it means we'll know where our money goes to. And the taxpayers will also be able to know how their resources are utilized. And this is going to offset the agitation that you saw with the Gen Zs and the people protesting across the country, Mr. Speaker. We need to unify our country. We need to cure our hoods, not just bandaging a hood without putting medication on the wound, Mr. Speaker. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I must say I support, but I also request the points are put forward to be considered, and more so, more focus to be put on reducing recurrent expenditures and channeling more resources on development. Thank you. I submit, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Basil. The Honorable John Makali, MP for Kandui.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also weigh in on this particular supplementary appropriation bill. Mr. Speaker, we are living in very unprecedented times. Like they say, unprecedented times and their consequences, we must be able to make unprecedented solutions. As has been indicated by the speakers before, this supplementary appropriation bill is unprecedented. We are being confronted as a House to deal with a supplementary appropriation bill just 1 month, barely 1 month after we had passed the main budget. And the last 1 month, Honorable Speaker, has been a serious period of retrospection and introspection as a House. Mr. Speaker, the last 1 month have actually taught us several things as representatives of the people. And it has reminded me of the old American slogan that there should be no taxation without representation. What have we learned from the events of post-June 25th, Kenyans have spoken loudly that they want openness. Kenyans have spoken loudly that they want transparency. Kenyans have spoken openly and loudly that they want accountability, that they do not want wastage, that they do not want pilferage. And as a House of Representatives, whose clarion call is the welfare of society and a just government of the people, we have no choice but to listen to them. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans have told us that we need to consult them. And public participation is a key constitutional imperative, which we as a House, as we sit, we must be able to take into account. I am looking at this supplementary appropriation bill, and I want to ask myself, does it meet the aspirations of what Kenyans have told us before, or we are still repeating the same mistake? Mr. Speaker, in the remarks while moving this particular bill, the chairman of the Budget and Appropriation Committee indicated that we are expanding our deficit by borrowing more. Kenyans have told us in no uncertain terms that we have to live within our means. So, Mr. Speaker, as we sit and discuss this supplementary appropriation bill, Kenyans are watching us. Are we reducing the borrowing powers, or are we borrowing more? And, Mr. Speaker, if you looked at the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee, it's saying we are going to have a 4.8% deficit, up from what was 3.84. Mr. Speaker, we need to look at that once we move into the committee of the whole House when we'll be discussing up this particular bill. But all is not lost. Let us look at the critical sectors of our economy. One of the critical sectors of our economy is agriculture. Mr. Speaker, agriculture accounts for 18% of our gross domestic product. And Mr. Speaker, in the report of the Budget Committee, we are happy that we are going to have subsidized fertilizer. But Mr. Speaker, we do not want to have the same story we had the last time, where we had fake subsidized fertilizer being distributed to our farmers. As a House and the committees of this House that are empowered to do oversight, we must raise up our bar to ensure that these funds that are being dispersed to the committees that we oversight in this particular House do their active role and do it properly for the benefit of the people whom we represent. My only disappointment is that in the budget, we are allocating a paltry 700 million shillings towards the sugarcane sector. Honorable Speaker, Nzoia farmers, Nzoia employees are owed quite a lot of money, courtesy of non-payment. And Mr. Speaker, I think in the committee of the whole House, how I wished that we will need to increase the sums of money that are going towards the sugar sector reforms so that our farmers and the employees who are in those particular factories can be able to benefit and feel part and parcel of this particular government. So, Honorable Speaker, we will be insisting that moving forward, if we cannot be able to make up in this particular supplementary appropriation bill, we should be able to move in the second supplementary budget to ensure that we allocate more funds that will go towards ensuring that we complete the sugar sector reforms which we had actually started in this particular budget. I am also happy that we are going to employ JSS interns, 46,000 of them. But Mr. Speaker, I am worried that in my constituency and the county where I come from, we have close to teachers who graduated from 2013 and they have never been employed. We need to invest more money in this human capital. Most of those people who are demonstrating, I met actually a teacher who graduated way back in 2013 and saying, I will be able to demonstrate every Tuesday and Thursday because I've never gotten a job ever since 2013, ever since I graduated. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to create more employment opportunities. As we be able to move on, we need to move and allocate more resources towards employment of a young generation, which is feeling left out, is not feeling included in this particular government, is not feeling that as legislators, we are actually taking up their issues very seriously. In regard to the education sector also, Honorable Speaker, much as we have allocated a huge chunk of money towards education, but we have problems in our educational institutions. If you go back to our secondary schools, our primary schools, the capitation that is meant to go to those schools never reaches there in time as and when it's required. Right now, some of the schools have closed early for lack of capitation. Head teachers are finding it very, very difficult to run those particular schools. So, Mr. Speaker, we'll be urging that as we move on, we need to begin moving to allocate more resources towards the education sector because it's critical in the development up of our nation. Mr. Speaker, my other worry is towards the infrastructure and rural electrification. Mr. Speaker, my constituency, only 40%, 45% of it has electricity. And Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that in this particular supplementary budget, we have deducted all those sums of money that were supposed to go towards the last mile and rural electrification. And particularly also the roads infrastructure. I have a road in my constituency, the Sangalo, Dorofu, Muskoma Road, which road, Mr. Speaker, got stuck way back in 2017. Right now, with these particular painful decisions we are making in this particular supplementary appropriation bill, hangs in balance. Mr. Speaker, as we move on and move towards the second supplementary appropriation bill, I am hopeful, Mr. Speaker, that we will be able to allocate more funds towards these particular stalled projects. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that we have tried to allocate some money towards our men in uniform, specifically our police officers. Mr. Speaker, the last 1 month, you could sympathize with the police officers who had to put their lives on the line to defend this country. Mr. Speaker, much as we are allocating some little increment towards their salaries,
Your time is gone, Honorable Makali, but you made very good points. Honorable Timothy Toritich.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on the appropriation bill. Honorable Speaker, in this country, it is never about how much money is allocated to a certain department within the executive. Honorable Speaker, it is about how we oversight as a house on how the money is utilized. Honorable Speaker, I want to commend the...
Order, honorable members, let us rise. Honorable Timothy Toroitich, you have 9.5 minutes. And this matter will be coming up for debate next time. Honorable members, the time being 7:05 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Wednesday, the 31st day of July 2024 at 9:30 a.m.